When my son died, I thought the worst was behind me, until I got a call from his wealthy boss. I found something. Come over now, and don't tell your daughter-in-law. It seems you're in danger too. One question flashed through my mind. What could be so terrible? But when I walked into the office and saw it with my own eyes, I froze. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. I stood at the living room window, watching the last mourners drift toward their cars. The coffee cup in my hand had gone cold an hour ago. Mrs. Patterson from the church hugged Leona at the gate, whispering something that made my daughter-in-law nod and dab her eyes with a tissue. Performance art, I was beginning to realize. Then I saw him, a tall man in a mechanic's jacket, standing just beyond the gate's shadow. Leona broke away from Mrs. Patterson and moved toward him with purpose. Their heads bent together, and even from this distance, their body language screamed intimacy. His hand brushed her arm. She leaned in, urgent, intense. Nothing about that interaction belonged at a funeral. I set down my cup and headed for the door. By the time I reached them, the man had vanished around the corner. Leona turned, and her face transformed instantly, grief sliding back into place like a mask she'd perfected. Leona? Who was that? Tears materialized in her eyes. Actual tears. Oh, just someone from the funeral home, confirming final arrangements. He wasn't wearing funeral home attire. A flash of irritation crossed her features before disappearing. Dad, I'm exhausted. Can we not do this now? I let it drop. 35 years as a fire inspector taught me when to push and when to observe. I watched her walk back inside, phone already in her hand, before she cleared the doorway. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of casseroles and condolences. But I kept noticing things. Leona's phone never left her hand. She'd type rapidly, her thumbs flying, then pause, read, and delete whatever she'd written. Type again. Delete again. Her eyes would dart around the room, checking if anyone was watching. She never saw me watching from the kitchen doorway. Around 8, the house finally emptied. Leona announced she was going upstairs to rest, her voice thick with exhaustion. I heard her footsteps overhead, pacing, then her muffled voice, animated, nothing like the broken widow she'd played all day. My phone rang. Nelson Gray, Ralph's boss. Mr. Crawford, I need to speak with you urgently. Nelson, if this is about the funeral expenses... He cut me off, his usually warm voice tight and formal. It's not about money. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., my office. Come alone. Don't tell Leona you're meeting me. I don't understand. You will. Just promise me. This is important. I promised. Questions multiplied in my mind like sparks in dry brush. Sleep wouldn't come. Around midnight, I found myself in Ralph's old bedroom, now the guest room, where Leona stored her endless shopping bags. I sat on the bed where my son used to read comic books, and I started remembering. 3 months ago, Leona had suddenly become kind. After 5 years of polite distance, she'd started calling me Dad with warmth, asking about my health, my retirement, whether I'd updated my will. Just want to make sure you're taken care of, she'd said, squeezing my hand. Then the insurance conversation. I'd overheard her pushing Ralph. We need security, honey. What if something happens? Your father's getting older. We need to think about the future. Ralph had resisted, but eventually he'd caved. He always caved with her. The arguments had started around then. Raised voices behind closed doors. Ralph's face growing haggard, his shoulders tight with stress. The night before the accident, he'd called me. Dad, can we talk? Something important. But Leona had interrupted in the background. Honey, we have plans, remember? Ralph had sighed. Tomorrow, Dad. I'll call you tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. Dawn light crept through the window, gray and cold. I hadn't moved from the bed. My old inspector's notepad lay open on my lap, filled with dates, observations, inconsistencies. My handwriting looked different, sharper, more focused. The shaky grief scrawl from the past week had disappeared. I checked my watch. 6 hours until the meeting with Nelson. I walked to my desk and pulled out the accident report I'd requested from the police department. I'd barely glanced at it before, too consumed by loss to process the details. Now I read with different eyes. Brake line failure, catastrophic. Total loss of braking on Interstate 10 during morning rush hour. Ralph's car had slammed into a concrete barrier at 70 miles per hour. The impact had been instant, fatal, no chance. But something nagged at me. Ralph was meticulous about car maintenance, always had been, ever since he was 16 and bought his first junker. I flipped through the pages, looking for the service history. There it was. 2 weeks before the accident, Ralph had taken the car to his regular shop. Full service, new brake fluid, complete inspection. Everything passed. I stared at that line until the words blurred. Brake lines don't deteriorate in 2 weeks. The thought arrived fully formed, delivered by 3 decades of investigating suspicious fires, of distinguishing accident from arson. I knew premeditation when I saw it. I knew the difference between bad luck and deliberate sabotage. Someone had touched those brakes after the service. I reached for my coffee, realized I was still holding the cold cup from yesterday. My hands were steady now. Not the trembling hands of a grieving father, but the steady hands of an investigator with a purpose. Upstairs, Leona's alarm went off. I heard her moving around, starting her morning routine. In a few hours, she'd come downstairs with her widow's face on, and I'd have to pretend I still believed it. But first, I needed to hear what Nelson had discovered. I needed to know what my son had been trying to tell me. I folded the accident report and slid it into my jacket pocket. The notepad went into my other pocket. Evidence, timeline, questions. The house was waking up around me, but I felt completely alone. My son was dead. My daughter-in-law was a stranger. And somewhere in the space between those two facts lay a truth I wasn't sure I wanted to find. But I was going to find it anyway. I came downstairs at 7:30 to find Leona in the kitchen making breakfast. Eggs, toast, fresh coffee. The domestic scene perfectly staged. She smiled when she saw me, but her eyes were on her phone, lying face down beside the stove. "Good morning, Dad. You look tired. Did you sleep at all?" "Some." I poured coffee, keeping my movements casual. "I have some errands today. Banking, paperwork." She glanced up, interested. "Oh, anything I can help with?" "Just boring administrative things. Should be back this afternoon." "Perfect." Her smile widened. "When you get back, we should talk. About the house, finances, planning for the future." "Sure, this afternoon." She turned back to the eggs, humming softly. "I'll make your favorite dinner, pot roast." I took my coffee to the table, watching her reflection in the window over the sink. The moment she thought I wasn't looking, her face went blank. She picked up her phone, typed something quickly, and smiled. A real smile, nothing like the careful expression she wore for me. 20 minutes later, I backed out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, I saw her standing at the window, phone pressed to her ear, animated and laughing, not even a trace of grief. Gray Construction occupied a modern glass building in Phoenix's business district. Nelson's assistant was waiting for me in the lobby, no pleasantries, just a swift escort to a conference room on the 3rd floor. Nelson entered 30 seconds later, looking like he'd slept in his car. He locked the door behind him. "Thank you for coming. What I'm about to show you will be difficult. Just show me." He hesitated, his hand on a tablet resting on the table. "I should have brought this to you sooner. I kept hoping I was misreading the situation." "Nelson, show me." He tapped the screen, and video footage appeared. Security camera, parking lot, timestamp from 7 days before Ralph's accident. My son paced beside his car, phone pressed to his ear. Even without audio, his fury was obvious. Jaw clenched, free hand gesturing sharply. Nelson adjusted something, and sound crackled through the speakers. Ralph's voice strained and loud. "I told you no, Leona. I won't sell Dad's house. That's insanity. He raised me there." Silence. Leona's response was inaudible, but Ralph's face crumbled like paper in fire. "I don't care about the money. Family isn't for sale." He ended the call and sat in his car for 10 minutes, head in his hands. The footage continued, showing my son crying in an empty parking lot, completely alone. Nelson stopped the playback. This was recorded 7 days before the accident. My throat had closed up. Play it again. We watched it 3 more times. Each viewing revealed new details, the way Ralph's hands shook, how he kept looking at his phone like he was expecting another call, the defeated slump of his shoulders when he finally drove away. Nelson crossed to his desk and opened a safe built into the wall. He pulled out a manila envelope, worn at the edges. "Ralph left this with me 5 weeks ago. His instructions were specific. Give it to you if anything happened to him. Not to Leona, only to you. Inside were bank statements, transactions highlighted in yellow. $23,000 transferred in increments over 3 months from Ralph's joint account. The recipient, M. Webb. There was also a handwritten note in Ralph's careful script. She claimed credit card debt. I checked. She doesn't have those cards. Where's this money going? Why is she lying? Beneath that, a life insurance policy. $500,000, dated 2 months ago. Ralph's signature looked forced, the letters uneven. He was worried, Nelson said quietly. For weeks he was distracted, stressed. He wanted to talk about family problems but kept putting it off. Then, the day before the accident, he finally scheduled a meeting with me for that Monday. He said, "I need advice about protecting my father." Those were his exact words. He never made it to that meeting. No, he didn't. I spread everything across the conference table: bank statements, insurance policy, accident report. My fire inspector training kicked in, that methodical approach to evidence I'd used for decades. Connect the dots, establish timeline, identify accelerants. Ralph had his car fully serviced 15 days before the accident, I said, pointing to the service record in the police report. New brake fluid, complete inspection, everything passed. Nelson leaned over the documents. And brake lines don't deteriorate in 2 weeks. They don't fail catastrophically without cause. I tapped the accident report. Someone accessed that car after the service. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The words hung in the air between us. We both knew what I was saying. We both understood the implications. Nelson handed me a USB drive. Everything's on here. Video, documents, copies of everything in that envelope. He pressed it into my palm, closing my fingers around it. Keep it safe. What are you gonna do? He asked. I looked at the photos of my son, at the evidence of betrayal spread across the table, at the timeline that pointed to premeditated murder. Find out exactly what happened. All of it. Every detail. And then, I met his eyes. Make sure justice is served, one way or another. Nelson nodded slowly. Ralph was like a son to me, too. Whatever you need, copies, resources, access to anything, you have it. I need to know who MP Webb is. I'll start digging, quietly. I gathered the documents, slipped them back into the envelope. The USB drive went into my pocket next to my notepad. Evidence, proof, purpose. The drive home took 20 minutes, but I didn't go home. I pulled into the public library parking lot 3 blocks from my house and sat with the engine running. My phone rang. Leona. I watched her name flash on the screen until it went to voicemail. A minute later, the notification appeared. I played it on speaker. Dad, where are you? We need to talk about the house and financial things. When will you be home? Her voice was warm, honey, concerned and loving. Completely false. I played it 2 more times, listening for cracks in the performance. There weren't any. She was good. She'd probably been practicing this role for months, maybe years. I pulled out my inspector's notepad and started a new page. Listed everything I knew, everything I needed to find out. Emia Webb was at the top, underlined 3 times. Who was this person receiving my son's money? What was their connection to Leona? How did they fit into the plan? Because it was a plan. I was certain now. The insurance policy, the pressure to sell my house, the arguments, the convenient brake failure, the perfect timing. Someone had killed my son for money. Someone had calculated his worth and decided it was worth more than his life, and that someone was living in my house right now, probably wondering where I was, probably getting impatient to start spending her inheritance. My phone buzzed again. Another call from Leona. I let it ring out. I wasn't ready to go home yet. Wasn't ready to sit across from her at dinner and pretend I believed the act. Not while rage burned behind my eyes, cold and focused. I opened the notepad to a fresh page and wrote, investigation log, numbered each line, dated each entry, made it official. This was no longer about grief. This was about evidence, truth, and eventually, justice. I started the car and pulled back onto the street. But I didn't turn toward home, not yet. I had work to do first. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove straight to Phoenix Police Department's Central Precinct on Washington Street. The accident report listed Detective James Torres as the lead investigator. I needed to know exactly where the official case stood before I went any further on my own. The precinct smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant. Torres met me in a small interview room. his badge clipped to a worn belt, file folder tucked under his arm. He looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from seeing too much. "Mr. Crawford." He shook my hand, gestured to a chair. "I'm sorry for your loss." I sat, placing my own folder on the table between us. "The brake line was damaged. Your report confirmed that." Torres opened his file, flipped through pages covered in technical language. "Damaged, yes. Catastrophic failure leading to total loss of braking function." He had the brakes serviced 15 days before the accident. Torres sighed, rubbing his eyes. "I know, I saw the service records, but proving deliberate tampering, without forensic evidence of tool marks, chemical interference, or clear signs of sabotage, it could be anything. Road debris, corrosion, manufacturing defect. You don't believe that?" "What I believe doesn't matter, Mr. Crawford. I need proof. Without it, my hands are tied. I'm sorry." I left the precinct with exactly what I'd expected. Sympathy, but no action. The system had limitations. I didn't. 2 days passed. I played the grieving father at home while my mind cataloged every detail, every inconsistency. Leona continued her performance, bringing me tea, asking about my day, slowly circling the topic of the house like a patient predator. On the third day, I drove to Steve's Automotive on East Indian School Road. Ralph had used this shop for years, trusted them completely. The place was busy, the sound of impact wrenches and the smell of motor oil filling the air. Steve, the head mechanic, wiped his hands on a rag when I introduced myself. His face fell. "Ralph, man, I'm so sorry. He was a good customer, always on time, never questioned the work. I need to ask about his last service, the brake work." Steve's expression shifted. Concern, maybe confusion. "Let me pull up the records." He led me to a cluttered office, typed into an ancient computer. "Here, full brake system service 15 days before the accident. I did the work myself. New pads, rotors, fluid flush. Those brakes were perfect." "Was that the last time you saw the car?" Steve scrolled through the screen, then stopped. "Actually, no. His wife brought it in about a month before that service. Said it was for routine maintenance, but Ralph hadn't scheduled anything. I called him to confirm. He seemed confused but told me to do whatever she wanted." My pulse quickened. "What date was that?" "November 28th. Why? Did she come alone?" Steve leaned back in his chair, thinking. "No. Now that you mention it, she had someone with her." "Hang on." He stood, motioned for me to follow. "We keep security footage for 90 days. Let me check." In the shop's tiny surveillance room, Steve rewound digital footage to November 28th. There was Leona's silver sedan pulling into the lot. She emerged from the driver's side. From the passenger side, a man in mechanic's coveralls, late 30s, confident walk, clearly comfortable in this environment. "Who is that?" I asked. Steve leaned closer to the screen, then straightened abruptly. "That's Marcus Webb. Used to work here until I fired him 3 years ago." "Why'd you fire him?" "Sloppy work, specifically with brake jobs. He'd cut corners, use substandard parts. I couldn't have that liability." Steve turned to me, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Why is he with your daughter-in-law?" "That's what I need to find out." Steve printed screenshots from the footage without me asking, handed them over in a manila envelope. "Ralph was good people. If something happened to him that wasn't an accident..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I drove home with the envelope on the passenger seat, Marcus Webb's face frozen in grainy surveillance images. Mjer Webb, not just a name on bank statements anymore, a person. A fired mechanic with expertise in brake systems who had accompanied Leona to Ralph's car maintenance appointment. An appointment Ralph hadn't scheduled. The pieces were connecting. That evening, Leona cooked an elaborate dinner, roasted chicken, vegetables, fresh bread. She refilled my water glass before I asked, smiled warmly, asked about my day with what seemed like genuine concern. Then she started. "Dad, I've been thinking about our future, both of us, alone in this big house." She cut her chicken precisely, not looking at me. "Maybe we should consider something smaller, more manageable. We could sell, split the proceeds, each get a nice condo." I played confused, uncertain. "This is my home. Ralph grew up here." Her patience cracked just slightly. "Ralph is gone. We need to be practical about finances now. Don't you want security in your retirement?" "I have security." "Do you?" She set down her fork, leaned forward. This house costs money to maintain. Property taxes, repairs, utilities. Wouldn't it be easier to have that capital working for you instead of being tied up in an aging property? I let the silence stretch, watched her calibrate her approach. I suppose I should think about it. Her smile returned. That's all I'm asking, just think about it. Over the next week, the pressure intensified. Real estate flyers appeared on the kitchen counter. She mentioned the house was worth at least $380,000, talked about simplifying, brought home brochures for senior living communities with activities and medical staff on site. She was positioning herself, playing the devoted daughter-in-law while maneuvering for inheritance. And she thought I was too confused, too grief-stricken to see it. One evening, she asked about my will, casually, over coffee, like she was asking about the weather. Have you thought about updating your estate planning since Ralph? My will? I stirred sugar into my cup slowly. I suppose I should look at it. I could help with that. Her voice was pure helpfulness. Make sure everything's in order, for your peace of mind. That's kind of you. I'll think about it. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand. Take your time. I'm here for you, Dad. Late that night, after she'd gone upstairs, I sat at the kitchen table with everything spread before me. Photos of Marcus Webb, bank statements showing $23,000 transferred to him, service records from Steve's shop showing Leona's unauthorized visit with Marcus, the accident report with brake line failure highlighted in yellow. The circumstantial evidence was strong, the pattern was clear. But Detective Torres had been right. I needed more. I needed proof of conspiracy, proof of intent, proof that would hold up in court. I opened my laptop and typed "Private Investigators, Phoenix, Arizona" into the search bar. If the police couldn't help, I'd build the case myself. I needed surveillance, recorded conversations, documentation of Leona's relationship with Marcus. I needed them to reveal themselves. The clock showed 1:47 a.m. Tomorrow I'd start making calls. I photographed every document, uploaded everything to a secure cloud drive, created folders labeled with dates, backed up the backup, no assumptions, only evidence. Above me, the house creaked as Leona shifted in bed. She was sleeping soundly, probably dreaming about insurance money and real estate proceeds. Let her dream. Let her think she was winning. Soon, very soon, she'd wake up to find the trap had already closed. By 9 the next morning, I'd called 3 private investigation firms. The first 2 sounded like they worked out of their cars. The third, Chen Investigations, had a professional receptionist and licensing credentials I could verify online. Sarah Chen met me at a coffee shop in Scottsdale, 20 miles from my neighborhood. Neutral territory. She arrived exactly on time, mid-40s, sharp eyes, no wasted movement. We sat in a corner booth away from the windows. You mentioned surveillance on your daughter-in-law. She pulled out a tablet, opened a notes app. What are we documenting? I'd rehearsed this. I suspect she's having an affair. More than that, I believe she may have been involved in my son's death. I need documentation of her activities and her relationship with a man named Marcus Webb. Sarah didn't flinch. Time frame? As long as it takes, but I need results within 2 weeks. 2,500 retainer. If she's meeting someone regularly, I'll have proof within a week. Her voice was steady, matter of fact. Photos, video if possible, audio recordings where legal, daily text updates on activity. I pulled out my checkbook, wrote $2,500 without hesitation. My retirement savings had been for security. This was security, just not the kind I'd imagined. If they're planning something, Sarah said, pocketing the check, they'll talk. People always think they're more careful than they are. The next 7 days tested every ounce of my patience and acting ability. At home, Leona escalated her campaign. She brought a real estate agent to just look at the house, got it appraised at $380,000. She showed me listings for senior communities with golf courses and weekly activities. She was simultaneously sweet and persistent, wearing me down like water on stone. I played my part carefully. I suppose you're right about the maintenance, I said, watching her eyes brighten. This place is a lot of work for one person. Each small concession strengthened her confidence. She was winning, or so she believed. Sarah's texts came daily. Subject observed. Meeting confirmed, same location. Audio captured. On the seventh day, we met again at the same coffee shop. Sarah slid a thick envelope across the table, followed by a USB drive. Your instincts were correct, Mr. Crawford. Her voice was quiet but firm. And it's worse than infidelity. The report documented 7 meetings between Leona and Marcus at the Desert Rose Motel on Van Buren. They arrived separately, left together. The pattern was consistent. Tuesdays and Thursdays around 3 p.m., always room 112. Then came the photographs. Leona and Marcus in the parking lot. Marcus's hand on her lower back. Leona laughing, relaxed, nothing like the grieving widow she played at home. You got audio? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Better than expected. Parabolic microphone through the motel window. They thought they were secure. Sarah tapped the USB drive. Everything's on here. But, Mr. Crawford, you should prepare yourself. What they're discussing goes beyond a fare. I paid for the coffee, took the envelope and drive to my car. Sat in the parking lot with my laptop open, earbuds in. Marcus's voice came through first, rough and impatient. The cops found nothing. You're clear on that. Now you need to move on the old man. Leona's response was casual, almost amused. I'm working on it. He's starting to trust the idea of selling the house. Trust? Just get him to sign the deed over. Once you have the house and the insurance money, we're done with this place. Arizona in February is miserable anyway. Give me 2 more weeks. He's old, confused since Ralph died. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him. I sat completely still, listening to my daughter-in-law call me the old man, discuss me like I was an obstacle to remove rather than a person. She wasn't grieving. She was executing a plan. And that plan included Ralph's death. The recording continued, Marcus asking about my will, Leona saying she was working on that too. Their laughter when Marcus suggested I might have an accident if I didn't cooperate. My hands shook, the only external sign of the rage burning through my chest. But I didn't break. I didn't scream or punch the dashboard. Instead, I thought, this is evidence. This is proof of conspiracy. This is what I need. That afternoon, I drove to the law offices of Mitchell & Associates in downtown Phoenix. I'd researched Sandra Mitchell extensively. 15 years specializing in wrongful death cases, strong track record, reputation for aggressive litigation. The consultation cost $350, worth every penny. Sandra's office overlooked the city, modern and efficient. She listened without interrupting as I laid out everything. Nelson's video, Ralph's envelope, the auto shop footage, Sarah's surveillance report, and recordings. She reviewed each piece methodically, taking notes in neat handwriting. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Crawford, you have strong circumstantial evidence of conspiracy to commit murder, an ongoing conspiracy to defraud you. But Arizona courts require clear proof for wrongful death civil cases. What does that mean? It means we need more, either a criminal conviction, which seems unlikely given your detective friend's assessment, or additional evidence showing premeditation and intent. Specifically, we need them to explicitly admit involvement in Ralph's death. The recordings show conspiracy to defraud you, absolutely. They're discussing manipulation and theft, but they're not confessing to murder. They reference the police finding nothing, which could mean anything. Sandra leaned forward. Here's the good news. They think they've succeeded. They're comfortable, making mistakes. If you give them enough rope, they might hang themselves. I understood immediately. I needed more admissions, more explicit statements. And to get those, I needed to appear even more vulnerable. Sandra outlined the strategy. Keep appearing to capitulate. Act confused, overwhelmed. If she pushes harder, she'll reveal more. People get sloppy when they think they're winning. That evening, I returned home to find Leona waiting with dinner and wine, a bottle of expensive red I recognized as one Ralph had been saving. I sat down, accepted a glass, and began my new performance. I've been thinking about what you said, about the house. I sipped the wine, let my shoulders slump. Maybe you're right. It is too much for me alone. Leona's entire posture changed. She leaned forward, attentive, supportive. Oh, Dad, I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this. It really is for the best. I'll need help with the legal process, transferring property, all that paperwork. I rubbed my temples like the thought exhausted me. I don't understand half of it anymore. Of course. She could barely contain her satisfaction. I'll find you a good lawyer, someone who can handle everything smoothly. You won't have to worry about any of it. When should we start? No rush. Her hand covered mine on the table. But maybe we could begin looking at the paperwork next week, just to see what's involved. What she didn't know, every word was being recorded by the device Sarah had provided, hidden in my shirt pocket, small, professional grade, impossible to detect without a sweep. I nodded slowly, playing exhausted and confused. All right, next week. After she went upstairs, triumphant and satisfied, I uploaded the recording to my secure cloud storage. Her eagerness to help me transfer the deed was documented. Her barely concealed greed was captured in digital clarity. I reviewed my growing case file, financial records showing $23,000 to Marcus Webb, surveillance photos of their meetings, audio recordings of conspiracy discussions, legal consultation notes outlining what additional evidence I needed. Sandra had been right. They were getting comfortable, making mistakes, revealing themselves one careless word at a time. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah Chen. Subject and male companion, meeting again tomorrow, 3 p.m., same motel. Want audio? I typed back, yes, everything. Tomorrow I'd play more confused. Maybe mention I'd scheduled an appointment with an estate lawyer, dangle the bait and see how far they'd go. I was no longer the grieving father waiting for official justice. I was building an airtight case, documenting every lie, recording every conversation, gathering evidence piece by methodical piece. And soon, very soon, I'd have enough to destroy them both. The morning after my performance with Leona, I sat at my desk reviewing Ralph's envelope again. The bank statements showed $23,000 to EMSA Webb, but that was only what Ralph had discovered. There could be more, hidden transfers, other accounts, layers of deception I hadn't uncovered yet. Sandra Mitchell had mentioned forensic accounting during our consultation. I spent 2 hours researching certified fraud examiners in Phoenix. Martha Price's credentials stood out. 20 years experience, specialized in marital asset investigations, detection of financial fraud. Her website showed case studies of uncovered embezzlement, hidden accounts, forged documents. I called at 9. By 10, I was sitting in her Tempe office. Martha was methodical, precise, no wasted words. You're requesting a comprehensive forensic audit of your son's marital accounts? I need to know where money went. All of it. She studied me across her desk. This type of investigation can uncover uncomfortable truths. Are you prepared for what I might find? I already know what you'll find. I need documentation that will stand up in court. Then I'll give you exactly that. 2 weeks. She quoted $200 per hour, estimated $4,000 total. I'll need account information, authorization as executor of your son's estate, and any documentation you already have. I provided everything, wrote the check without hesitation. This was what retirement savings were for, truth and justice, not comfort and security. While Martha worked, Leona's campaign intensified. 3 days after hiring Martha, I came home to find a professional woman with a clipboard walking through my house, measuring rooms, photographing features. Leona trailed behind her, proprietary as if she already owned the place. Just getting a baseline value, Dad, Leona explained cheerfully. The appraiser quoted $380,000 market value. Leona's eyes shone with calculation. That evening, she presented glossy brochures for senior living communities, places with full amenities and comprehensive services. The message was clear. I should move somewhere more appropriate, sell the house, hand over the proceeds. I played my role, studied the brochures carefully, appearing overwhelmed. It does look nice, though expensive. Leona patted my hand. We'll figure out the finances together, Dad. Don't worry. Over the next week, her tactics escalated. She mentioned the house needed expensive repairs, roof work, plumbing replacement, foundation issues. She brought contractor estimates, solicited without my knowledge or permission. See, $20,000 just for the roof. Wouldn't it be easier to sell? She talked about property taxes, utility costs, maintenance burden, building her case for why an old man couldn't handle this house alone. Each conversation I recorded, each manipulations documented, but what struck me most was her comfort with deception. She lied as easily as breathing. This wasn't a sudden decision to kill Ralph. This was who she'd always been, a predator who'd finally found the perfect opportunity. 2 weeks after hiring her, Martha requested a meeting. I drove to her office, anticipation and dread mixing in equal measure. Her conference room table was covered with spreadsheets, highlighted bank statements, printed documents organized in neat stacks. Martha looked tired, but satisfied, the expression of someone who'd solved a complex puzzle. "Mr. Crawford, what I found is systematic financial abuse spanning 18 months. She walked me through it methodically. Leona had withdrawn $47,000 from joint accounts over 6 months, claiming expenses that never existed. Business suits Ralph never wore, medical bills for procedures he never had, home repairs that were never done. She forged your son's signature twice. Martha showed me withdrawal slips with handwriting analysis overlays. The pressure and slant are wrong. These aren't his signatures. The money had gone to Marcus Webb in increments designed to avoid attention. $1,500 here, $2,200 there, always staying below reporting thresholds. But Martha had found something more damaging. Email correspondence between your daughter-in-law and Marcus Webb. She turned her laptop toward me. Marcus used his personal email carelessly, linked it to an online purchase that was charged to your son's credit card. That's how I traced the account. She pulled up the emails, recovered through the credit card trail. October, Marcus writing, got the parts, brake fluid line adapter, pressure gauge, should work clean. Leona's response, make sure nothing looks tampered, has to be accidental. November, Marcus asking about the timeline, Leona responding, after the insurance increase goes through, February at earliest. December, Marcus complaining about waiting, Leona saying, it has to look natural, yes, patience. January 16th, 4 days before Ralph's death. Wednesday morning, he always takes Interstate 10 to the job site. Route is perfect, high speed, traffic, difficult to investigate. I sat completely still, reading their clinical discussion of murdering my son. They'd planned it like a business transaction, purchased equipment, chosen the location, waited for optimal timing. Martha's voice was gentle. I'm sorry, this is premeditated conspiracy to commit murder. You need to take this to the police immediately. I drove home in afternoon traffic, the report and USB drive on the seat beside me. I didn't feel grief anymore. That had burned away over the past weeks, leaving something colder and more focused. The kind of fury I used to feel investigating arson cases where someone deliberately set fires that killed people. Calculated evil deserved calculated response. Leona had killed Ralph for insurance money and inheritance. She'd planned it for months, and now she was trying to steal everything I had left. I wouldn't let emotion compromise the case. I'd build it piece by methodical piece until it was unbreakable. Then I'd destroy her completely within the law. That evening, I came home to find Leona cooking pot roast, my favorite meal. She was celebrating privately, I realized. She thought she'd won. I've been thinking more about those senior communities, I said, playing exhausted. Maybe I should visit one, see what they're like. Leona's smile could have lit the entire room. Oh, Dad, that's wonderful. I'll schedule tours for next week. You'll love them. So much easier than maintaining this old place. She served dinner, poured wine, talked about our future, by which she meant her future, funded by my assets and Ralph's death. I nodded, agreed, asked appropriate questions. Every word recorded, every manipulation documented. She had no idea the trap was closing around her. After she went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table reviewing Martha's report one more time. The emails were explicit. Premeditation, method, timeline, motive clearly established. Combined with Sarah's surveillance recordings, the auto shop footage, Ralph's posthumous warnings, and the accident report, I had a comprehensive case. Tomorrow, I'd call Sandra Mitchell and request an immediate meeting. It was time to involve Detective Torres officially, not as a skeptical investigator closing an accident case, but as a detective receiving evidence of first-degree murder conspiracy. I photographed the key pages, uploaded everything to my secure cloud storage. My phone showed 11:43 p.m. Ralph had died 42 days ago. Tomorrow, his killer's world would begin collapsing. I closed the report and allowed myself one moment of satisfaction. Justice was coming. The next morning, I arrived at Sandra Mitchell's office at 8:30 with 2 large folders and 3 USB drives. Everything I'd gathered over 7 weeks, Nelson's video, Ralph's envelope, Sarah's surveillance reports, auto shop footage, Martha's financial audit and email evidence, my own recordings of Leona's manipulation. Sandra cleared her conference room table and spent 2 hours reviewing it all methodically. She made notes, cross-referenced dates, created a timeline on her legal pad. Finally, she looked up. "Mr. Crawford, this is one of the most comprehensive circumstantial cases I've seen." She tapped the printed emails. "You have motive, opportunity, means, premeditation, ongoing conspiracy, and explicit written discussion of the murder. We need to take this to Detective Torres immediately." He closed the case. He'll reopen it when he sees these. Sandra reached for her phone. "This isn't just wrongful death material. This is criminal evidence, multiple felonies." Torres agreed to meet that afternoon. Sandra drove us to Phoenix Police Department's Central Precinct. We sat across from Torres in the same interview room, where he'd told me his hands were tied. He looked different now, more attentive, his detective's instincts engaged rather than just processing paperwork. Sandra presented the evidence chronologically. Financial fraud over 18 months, the emails discussing break parts and timing, surveillance of ongoing conspiracy to defraud me, Leona's pressure campaign to steal my assets. Torres reviewed the emails carefully, particularly the January 16th message. Wednesday morning, Interstate 10. He pulled out Ralph's accident report, checked the details. Ralph died Wednesday, January 19th, morning rush hour, on Interstate 10. His expression hardened. "This changes everything. These emails are direct evidence of premeditated conspiracy to commit murder." He looked at me, and I saw genuine regret in his eyes. "Mr. Crawford, I apologize for closing the case prematurely. I should have dug deeper. Can you act on this now?" "I'm reopening as a homicide investigation, full resources." He stood, collected the evidence. "I'll need to keep these originals. You have copies?" "Everything's backed up digitally." "Good. I'll be in touch within 48 hours. We're going after both of them." Torres moved quickly. Within 2 days, he obtained warrants for Marcus Webb's phone records, email accounts, financial transactions, purchase history. Marcus was brought in for questioning on March 3rd. Sarah Chen called me that evening. Marcus arrived at the precinct confident, left 3 hours later looking like he'd seen death. Torres had confronted him with everything: the emails, money transfers, auto shop footage showing him with Leona at Ralph's car. Marcus had lawyered up immediately, stopped talking, but his reaction had confirmed guilt. Police established surveillance on both Marcus and Leona, though I kept this information from her. At home, I continued playing the confused old man considering selling his house. 5 days later, March 5th, Sarah called urgently. "Marcus just showed up at Leona's location. You need to see this." She sent real-time video. Marcus arrived at a coffee shop where Leona was waiting, his body language radiating fury. Even from Sarah's distant position with telephoto lens, his agitation was obvious. They talked briefly, then moved to Marcus's truck in the parking lot, seeking privacy. They didn't know Sarah had positioned a backup audio device underneath the vehicle the day before, anticipating exactly this scenario. The argument was explosive. Marcus' voice rising. "You said the old man would sign. You promised this would be over. Now cops are asking about emails, about brake parts I bought. What did you do?" Leona trying to calm him. "They don't have anything solid. Just stay quiet." "Stay quiet? They showed me pictures of us at that motel. They know about the money." His voice cracked. "When are we getting paid? Where's the insurance check?" "It hasn't arrived yet. These things take time." "It's been 7 weeks. Something's wrong." The argument escalated. Leona tried maintaining control, but she was cracking too under the pressure. Then Marcus said it. "I did what you asked. I cut that brake line clean, made it look like corrosion. You said we'd be set after the insurance came through." Leona's response was urgent, panicked. "Keep your voice down, you idiot." But it was too late. Sarah's recorder had captured everything. Marcus had just confessed to sabotaging Ralph's brakes. Leona hadn't denied it. She'd confirmed it by telling him to be quiet. Sarah texted me, "Got it. Full confession on audio." I forwarded it immediately to Torres. Within an hour, he texted back, "Warrant issued for Marcus Webb, conspiracy to commit murder. Moving on, Leona Crawford tomorrow." While Torres prepared criminal charges, Sandra prepared civil action. We spent 2 days finalizing the wrongful death lawsuit against both Leona and Marcus. We're filing for $2.5 million, Sandra explained. $1 million for loss of Ralph's companionship and support, $500,000 for emotional distress, $1 million punitive damages. I don't need their money. This isn't about need, it's about justice, taking everything she killed your son for. Sandra met my eyes. She gets nothing. No insurance, no house, no inheritance. Exactly. Sandra also filed a formal challenge to the life insurance payout. She submitted all evidence to the insurance company with a legal brief. Beneficiary participated in insured's murder, therefore disqualified under Arizona law. The insurance company's legal department responded within 48 hours. Payment. Suspended pending criminal investigation outcome. Leona didn't know yet. The check hadn't arrived, and she assumed it was processing delays. But her primary motive, the insurance money, was now blocked. Everything she'd killed Ralph for was slipping away. March 10th, 5 days after Marcus's recorded confession. 2 days before Torres planned to execute arrest warrants. I sat at dinner with Leona, who'd been noticeably tense all week. She'd been calling Marcus repeatedly. He wasn't answering. She didn't know he was in hiding, terrified of imminent arrest. "Dad," she said, forced cheerfulness straining her voice, "I think we should move forward with the house sale. I found a real estate agent who—" I interrupted gently. "Actually, Leona, I've been thinking. I'm not ready to sell." Her face froze. "What? But you agreed." "I said I'd think about it. I've thought about it. This is Ralph's home. I'm staying." Leona's mask cracked. Anger flashed across her features before she controlled it. "That's not practical. You can't manage this place alone." I met her eyes steadily. "I'll manage just fine." "You're being unreasonable. It's my house, Leona, my decision." She stood abruptly, dishes clattering. "Fine. Stay in your falling-apart house. See if I care." She left the kitchen, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. That night, I received a text from Torres. "Arrest warrant signed, executing tomorrow, 6 a.m. Stay home, stay safe. Justice for Ralph is coming." I sat in my darkened living room, the house quiet around me. Upstairs, Leona was on her phone, probably trying to reach Marcus again. She had no idea that in less than 12 hours, police would arrive with handcuffs and charges of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Tomorrow, everything changed. The investigation phase ended. The justice phase began. I allowed myself a moment to think of Ralph, his face, his laugh, his integrity, the way he'd called me every Sunday just to check in. "I kept my promise," I whispered to the darkness. "I found the truth, and they're going to pay for what they did to you." I closed my eyes briefly, gathering strength for what was coming. Tomorrow, the trap would spring shut. 6 a.m., March 11th. I sat in my living room, coffee untouched on the side table, watching the clock. At 6:14, 3 unmarked police vehicles pulled up outside. Detective Torres emerged first, followed by 4 uniformed officers. I opened the door before they could knock. Torres nodded once, silent acknowledgement between us. Then he called up the stairs. "Leona Crawford, Phoenix Police, we have a warrant for your arrest." The sound of Leona's footsteps stopped. Silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then she appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing her bathrobe, confusion and fear crossing her face. "What? There must be some mistake." Torres walked to the base of the stairs, holding up the warrant. "You're being charged with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in the death of Ralph Crawford. You have the right to remain silent." "What? No, this is insane." An officer moved up the stairs. Leona backed away, but there was nowhere to go. They turned her around, placed handcuffs on her wrists. Her eyes found me, standing calmly by the door. Understanding and rage hit her simultaneously. You did this?" Torres guided her down the stairs, but she twisted toward me, her mask shattering completely. "I'm your family. Ralph was my husband." My voice came out cold, steady. "Ralph was my son, and you murdered him for insurance money." She lunged toward me, screaming, but the officers held her back. "You senile old man! I'll destroy you. You have no idea what you're doing." Torres intervened firmly. "Mrs. Crawford, you need to come with us now." They led her toward the door. She was still shouting threats, promising lawsuits, calling me delusional. I watched through the window as they placed her in the back of a police car, her face contorted with fury visible through the glass. The vehicles pulled away. The house fell silent. After 7 weeks of lies and manipulation, Leona was finally gone. That same day, Sandra Mitchell filed the wrongful death lawsuit in Maricopa County Superior Court. She called me at noon with the news. It's filed. 47 pages documenting the conspiracy, financial fraud, Ralph's murder, and attempts to defraud you. We're seeking $2.5 million in damages. When will she receive it? Within 48 hours of making bail. The process server will deliver it personally. Sandra paused. How are you holding up? I'm fine. When does the civil trial start? Probably June. We'll move faster than criminal court. And our burden of proof is lower, preponderance of evidence, not beyond reasonable doubt. March 12th. Leona made bail, $250,000, secured by her mother's house. She was released with GPS monitoring and restrictions against leaving Arizona. That afternoon, a process server delivered the civil lawsuit summons to her mother's address. According to his report, Leona's reaction was extreme emotional distress. She called me an hour later. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her voice alternating between tears and rage. How can you do this to me? I loved Ralph. I loved you like a father. This is betrayal. You're going to regret this. I listened once, then deleted it. Sandra advised me to block Leona's number. Document any contact attempts. It supports our case that she's harassing you. Within days, Leona retained Bruce Kendrick, a criminal defense attorney with a reputation for aggressive tactics. His retainer was $15,000, money she scraped together by draining her remaining accounts and borrowing from her mother. Kendrick immediately filed a motion to dismiss the civil case, arguing it should be stayed pending criminal trial outcome. Sandra had anticipated this. At the hearing, she argued persuasively that civil and criminal cases were independent, involved different standards of proof, and I had every right to pursue civil damages regardless of criminal proceedings. The judge denied Kendrick's motion. The civil case would proceed. Meanwhile, Marcus Webb was spiraling. He hadn't been arrested yet. Prosecutors were building their case, but he knew it was coming. Sarah Chen, still conducting surveillance at my request, documented 3 meetings between Marcus and Leona during the next 2 weeks. In the most heated exchange, recorded through a parabolic microphone, Marcus shouted, "You said this would be easy money. Now I'm looking at murder charges. We need to run." Leona slapped him. "Running makes us look guilty. My lawyer will handle this." "Handle it? I cut the brake line. On your orders." "Shut up. They're probably listening." Their partnership was fracturing under pressure, exactly as I'd hoped. March 25th. The insurance company's legal department sent formal notification to Leona. Her claim for the $500,000 death benefit was denied pending outcome of criminal investigation. Arizona law prohibited beneficiaries from profiting from the insured's murder. If convicted, she'd never see the money. If acquitted criminally but found liable civilly, she still wouldn't see it. The letter devastated her. She called me again, using her mother's phone since I'd blocked her number. This time, I answered. "The insurance money." Her voice was breaking. "They won't pay." My response was measured. "You killed Ralph for money you'll never receive. That's justice." Silence on the line. Then, "You did this. You poisoned them against me. I gave them evidence of conspiracy to commit murder. You did this to yourself. Please." Desperation crept into her voice. "Drop the lawsuit. I'll leave Arizona. You'll never see me again. You're going to face justice for what you did to Ralph. Every penny you stole, every day in prison, every consequence you deserve." I hung up. That evening, I sat in my quiet home reading the insurance denial letter Sandra had forwarded. Every financial motivation Leona had was gone. The insurance money, blocked. My house, protected by the pending lawsuit. Ralph's estate, frozen by probate court pending investigation. She was living with Marcus in his apartment, GPS monitored, facing murder charges, with mounting legal bills and no income. The walls were closing in exactly as planned. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Sandra to prepare for depositions, the next phase of forcing Leona and Marcus to testify under oath, locking them into stories they couldn't escape. I placed the letter in my evidence folder, now several inches thick. Ralph's photo sat on my desk, my son's face forever frozen at age 32. The wheels of justice turned slowly, but they were turning. March 26th. Bruce Kendrick filed a counterclaim against me in the civil case. Emotional abuse, elder manipulation, wrongful use of legal process. He sought $100,000 in damages. The claim alleged I'd coerced Leona into staying in my home, psychologically manipulated her after Ralph's death, and was now weaponizing the legal system against a grieving widow. Sandra called immediately. They're desperate. This is standard defense tactic. Attack the victim, flip the narrative. Don't worry, it's baseless. She filed a motion to dismiss within 48 hours, attaching my recordings of Leona's manipulation attempts, Sarah's surveillance footage, and the explicit email evidence of murder conspiracy. The hearing was set for 2 weeks out. While the countersuit motion was pending, Sandra filed for a temporary restraining order against Leona, arguing she posed a danger based on her threats during arrest and subsequent voicemails. April 3rd, the restraining order hearing. Bruce Kendrick argued Leona was no threat and was being persecuted by a vindictive old man. Sandra presented the arrest video showing Leona's violent reaction, transcripts of threatening voicemails, and expert testimony about patterns of behavior in conspiracy cases. The judge's decision was swift. Restraining order granted. Mrs. Crawford must maintain 500 feet distance from Mr. Crawford and his property. Additionally, she must vacate any claim to the property and remove her belongings within 48 hours. Leona had to leave the house she'd planned to inherit. April 5th. I stood on my porch watching Leona arrive with Marcus in a U-Haul truck. A police officer supervised per the restraining order. Leona moved quickly, angrily throwing items into boxes. She took Ralph's clothes she had no right to, and personal items. When she tried to take Ralph's laptop, the officer stopped her. "That's estate property, ma'am. You can't remove it." Leona glared at me across the yard. I didn't react. Just watched as she loaded the truck, her movement sharp with fury. Marcus looked defeated, hunched, avoiding eye contact with everyone. They finished in 90 minutes. As the truck pulled away, I felt the house exhale. I walked through the rooms she'd occupied, opening windows, letting fresh air replace her presence. Then I changed every lock she'd ever had access to. Physical reclamation of my space. Without structure, without the house, without money, Leona started unraveling. Sarah Chen's reports showed her living in Marcus's cramped apartment, fighting constantly. More critically, Leona was making terrible decisions. She sold Ralph's possessions online, his tools, his watch collection, personal items, for quick cash. Sandra immediately filed a motion citing her for dissipation of marital assets and theft of estate property. But Leona's biggest mistake was social media. Despite what must have been her lawyer's advice to stay offline, she posted photos on Facebook, images with Marcus, captions like, "Finally free," and "Real love doesn't judge." Pictures of new clothes, restaurant meals, projecting false happiness. Sarah screenshot everything. Each post undermined Leona's grieving widow defense. Mid-April, Detective Torres called with an update. Marcus Webb contacted the DA's office. He wants to discuss his options. Translation, he wanted a plea deal. Marcus is facing first-degree murder conspiracy charges, Torres explained. Potentially life in prison. But if he testifies against Leona, provides details about planning and execution, the DA might reduce charges to second degree or even manslaughter. He's going to flip on her. Will that help the civil case? Absolutely, Sandra confirmed when I called her. If Marcus testifies that Leona orchestrated everything, that she paid him to sabotage the brakes, that's direct evidence. It makes our case ironclad. April 18th, the hearing on Leona's countersuit. I attended with Sandra sitting in the back of the courtroom. Bruce Kendrick made his arguments, painting me as manipulative, Leona as victim. Then Sandra presented her response. She played excerpts from my recordings, Leona pressuring me about the house, discussing my estate, manipulating me with false concern. She showed surveillance footage of Leona with Marcus at the motel, clearly not grieving. She referenced the email evidence of murder conspiracy. Finally, she addressed the judge directly. Your Honor, Mrs. Crawford's countersuit claims she's a victim of Mr. Crawford's manipulation. The evidence shows the opposite. She manipulated him, conspired to murder his son, attempted to steal his property, and is now attempting to use this court to avoid accountability. The judge's decision was swift. The countersuit is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm sanctioning Mrs. Crawford's attorney for filing a frivolous claim. This court will not be used to perpetuate fraud. Sandra leaned toward me. We just won round 2. By late April, Leona was completely isolated. Her mother had distanced herself after seeing the evidence. Friends had disappeared. The media portrayal was universally negative. She was living in Marcus's apartment, GPS monitored, unable to work, draining what little money remained on legal fees. Marcus was barely speaking to her. Knowing he was about to betray her for a plea deal, her attorney had privately advised her the criminal case was very difficult. Lawyers speak for, "You're going to lose." April 30th. Detective Torres reached out one final time before trial preparations intensified. "I wanted you to know, we have enough for criminal charges against both defendants. Marcus's confession, the emails, the financial records, the auto shop footage. It's comprehensive. Marcus's deal is being finalized. He'll plead to second-degree murder conspiracy, serve 15 years, testify against Leona." Torres paused. "Her trial is scheduled for August. Your son would be proud of you, Mr. Crawford. You built this case brick by brick." I thanked him, but felt no pride. Only cold satisfaction at seeing justice's machinery in motion. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with Sandra, reviewing preparation for the civil trial, scheduled to begin June 1st. Sandra spread documents across the table. Deposition transcripts showing Leona had invoked Fifth Amendment protection 47 times. Marcus's preliminary testimony from his plea negotiations, expert reports on brake tampering, financial analyses. "We're ready," Sandra said. "More than ready. When we walk into that courtroom, we'll have the strongest wrongful death case I've ever seen." I looked at Ralph's photo on my phone, my son at graduation, smiling, proud, alive. In 2 months, a jury would hear what Leona did. They'd see the emails, hear the recordings, learn about the brake line sabotage, and they'd deliver a verdict that said Ralph's life mattered, that justice existed, that murder had consequences. I touched the phone screen lightly, my thumb against my son's face. "Almost there, son. Almost there." June 1st. I sat in the courtroom gallery behind Sandra Mitchell's table. The room was formal, wood-paneled, American flag in the corner. Leona sat across the aisle with Bruce Kendrick, wearing a conservative navy dress, attempting to project sympathy. But her eyes remained hard, angry. The jury, 12 citizens of Maricopa County, filed in. Sandra rose for her opening statement. "Members of the jury, the evidence will show that Leona Crawford and Marcus Webb conspired to murder Ralph Crawford for financial gain." Her voice was clear, methodical. "They planned it for months, purchased automotive parts to sabotage his vehicle, timed the murder after a life insurance increase. Then they executed their plan on January 19th, 2025. She paused, making eye contact with each juror. "Ralph Crawford died on Interstate 10 when his brakes failed catastrophically. It wasn't an accident, it was murder, and the defendants are responsible." The first week focused on establishing motive. Sandra presented bank records showing $47,000 transferred from Ralph and Leona's joint account to Marcus Webb over 6 months. Martha Price took the stand, professional and precise. She walked the jury through the systematic fraud, the forged signatures, the pattern of deception. Kendrick cross-examined aggressively, but couldn't shake her analysis. Next came the insurance policy. Documents showed Ralph's life insurance increased to $500,000 just 2 months before his death, at Leona's insistence. The insurance agent testified Ralph had seemed hesitant, but Leona pushed. "We need security for the future." I watched the jurors taking notes. They were following, understanding, seeing the pattern emerge. The second week presented the conspiracy itself. Sandra displayed the emails recovered by Martha Price on large screens. Marcus discussing brake parts. Leona responding about timing, their careful planning to make it look accidental. Each email was dated, authenticated, devastating. Then came Sarah Chen, professional, credible, describing her surveillance of Leona and Marcus at motels, recording their conversations. Sandra played the audio from the March 5th parking lot argument. The courtroom fell silent. Marcus's voice filled the space. "I cut that brake line clean, made it look like corrosion." Leona's recorded response. "Keep your voice down." Several jurors leaned forward. This was the moment. Direct admission of murder. Steve from the auto shop testified next. He described Ralph as meticulous about vehicle maintenance, then recounted the unusual service visit. Leona bringing Ralph's car without authorization, accompanied by Marcus Webb, a mechanic Steve had fired for cutting corners on brake work. Sandra showed the jury security footage. Leona and Marcus discussing something intently next to Ralph's vehicle. Ralph's brakes were perfect when he left my shop, Steve said. There's no mechanical reason they should have failed unless someone tampered with them afterward. Kendrick's defense strategy was to attack credibility. He implied I was a confused elderly man who misinterpreted normal family conversations. He suggested the financial transfers were legitimate loans. He claimed the emails were taken out of context, but each argument crumbled under Sandra's redirect examination. The recordings spoke for themselves. The financial analysis was airtight. The technical evidence was irrefutable. By mid-July, even Kendrick seemed to recognize the case was lost. His cross-examinations became shorter, less aggressive. He was going through motions. July 28th. The courtroom stirred when Marcus Webb entered, disheveled, wearing jail orange, shackled. Part of his plea agreement required truthful testimony in the civil trial. Sandra called him to the stand. For 3 hours, Marcus detailed the conspiracy. Leona had approached him in September, said she wanted out of her marriage, but needed financial security first. She proposed increasing Ralph's insurance, then staging an accident. Marcus would sabotage the brakes. His automotive expertise made it possible. They'd split the insurance money. Marcus described purchasing the brake line tools online, waiting for the right opportunity, cutting the hydraulic line in Ralph's car while Leona distracted a neighbor. He described January 19th, waiting for news, Leona calling with fake tears. Something terrible happened. The jury watched, transfixed. During Marcus's testimony, Leona began shaking her head, whispering urgently to Kendrick. As Marcus described her coldly calculating the timing for Ralph's death, she lost control. She stood, screaming, "You lying snake! You said you loved me! You said we'd be together!" The judge gavelled sharply. Kendrick tried to restrain her, but she was beyond reason. "I didn't force you to do anything. It was your idea, your plan." The judge ordered a recess. Bailiffs escorted the hysterical Leona from the courtroom. The jury had seen her mask completely shatter. When court reconvened, Leona was subdued, medicated, but the damage was done. Her outburst had confirmed everything Marcus said. August 18th. Sandra delivered her closing argument with quiet intensity. Leona Crawford murdered her husband for money. The evidence proves it beyond any doubt. Ralph Crawford was 42 years old. He had decades of life ahead. She paused. His father deserves justice. Ralph's memory deserves justice. And you, the jury, have the power to deliver that justice. Kendrick's closing was brief. He asked for mercy, suggested reasonable doubt, but his heart wasn't in it. Everyone in the courtroom knew it. August 20th. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. I waited in a courthouse conference room with Sandra, drinking bad coffee, not speaking much. When the bailiff called us back, my pulse quickened slightly. The jury foreman stood. In the matter of Crawford versus Crawford and Webb, we the jury find for the plaintiff. We find that defendants Leona Crawford and Marcus Webb are liable for the wrongful death of Ralph Crawford. The foreman read the damages. $1.8,900,000 for loss of companionship, $400,000 for emotional distress, $500,000 in punitive damages. I felt no triumph, only quiet satisfaction. Justice had spoken. After the verdict, reporters crowded the courthouse steps. Sandra made a brief statement praising the jury's consideration. I declined to speak. I walked to my car, got in, sat for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel. The verdict didn't bring Ralph back. Nothing could. But it proved his death wasn't meaningless. That accountability existed. That evil had consequences. My phone buzzed. Detective Torres. DA is moving forward with criminal charges immediately. Given the civil verdict, Leona's attorney is advising her to take a plea deal. It's over, Mr. Crawford. You won. I started the engine. One more chapter remained. The criminal sentencing. Then, finally, I could rest. August 21st, morning after the verdict. Detective Torres called with news. The DA met with Leona's attorney last night. Given the civil verdict and Marcus's testimony, they're offering a plea deal, 25 years without parole for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. She's taking it. No trial. She can't win. The civil verdict established liability. Marcus testified under oath. Her courtroom outburst confirmed the conspiracy. Kendrick advised her that a criminal jury would give her life without parole. 25 years is the best she'll get. I absorbed this. No criminal trial meant no more courtroom appearances, no more reliving Ralph's death. It was ending. What about Marcus? 15 years per his agreement. He'll serve at least 12 before parole eligibility. August 25th. The criminal sentencing took place in the same courthouse. I attended, sitting in the gallery. Leona appeared in jail clothing, thinner, older looking than 7 months ago when this began. The judge reviewed the plea agreement, confirmed she understood she was waiving her right to trial. Then he asked if she had anything to say. Leona stood, read from a prepared statement. "I'm sorry for what happened. I made terrible choices. I take responsibility." The words were hollow, coached by her attorney, devoid of genuine remorse. The judge wasn't fooled. "Mrs. Crawford, you orchestrated your husband's murder for financial gain. You showed no mercy to Ralph Crawford. This court will show you none. 25 years in the Arizona Department of Corrections without possibility of parole." The gavel fell. Leona was led away. She didn't look at me. Marcus was sentenced the same day. His allocution was more genuine, voice shaking, tears visible. I can't explain why I agreed to help. Money, I guess. Stupidity. "I'm sorry to Mr. Crawford. I'm sorry to Ralph's memory. I'll spend every day of my sentence regretting what I did." The judge was slightly more lenient in tone, but the sentence stood. 15 years. Marcus would be nearly 60 when released. I watched both sentencings with no satisfaction, no anger, just the quiet knowledge that the legal system had functioned. Justice, imperfect but real, had been served. As I left the courthouse, a reporter asked how I felt. "I feel that my son's death has been acknowledged. That accountability exists. That's all I needed." 2 days after sentencing, Sandra called with the final financial piece. The insurance company has formally voided Leona's claim. They're attaching the $1.8 million civil judgment. Leona will never see a cent of that money. The state will seize her assets to partially satisfy the judgment. I didn't care about the money. The important thing was, Leona gained nothing from Ralph's death. No insurance payout, no house, no inheritance, nothing but 25 years in prison. The plan that began last September with dreams of wealth ended in complete destruction. August 28th. Nelson Gray visited me at home. We sat on the back porch, coffee in hand, watching the late summer afternoon. Nelson broke the silence. "Ralph would be proud of you. What you did. The investigation, the evidence gathering, seeing it through. That took courage." I shook my head slightly. "I just wanted the truth." "You got more than truth. You got justice." Nelson paused. "I'm establishing a scholarship at Arizona State University in Ralph's name, the Ralph Crawford Engineering Scholarship, for students who show integrity along with talent. That's who Ralph was." I felt my eyes burning, but didn't let tears fall. "Thank you." He'd like that. Later that afternoon, I drove to the cemetery. I hadn't visited since the funeral, couldn't face it during the investigation. Now, with justice delivered, I could. Ralph's headstone was simple granite. Ralph Crawford, 1982-2025, beloved son. I stood before it, hands in pockets, and spoke quietly. "It's done, son. 25 years for her. 15 for Marcus. They won't profit from what they did. I made sure of that." The words felt inadequate. "I know it doesn't bring you back. Nothing can. But your death mattered. Justice was served, and people know. They know what you were worth." I placed my hand on the cool granite. "I love you. I always will." A breeze moved through the cemetery. Time to let Ralph rest. That evening, I sat on my front porch as the sun set over Phoenix. The house was quiet, truly quiet, without the taint of Leona's presence. I opened an old photo album I hadn't looked at in years. Ralph as a child, gap-toothed smile. Ralph at high school graduation. Ralph accepting his engineering degree. Ralph and Leona's wedding. I paused at that photo, seeing her smile now as the mask it was. But I move past it. More photos of Ralph working, laughing, living. The life Leona stole. The memories that remained. The album was full of a life that mattered, a son who was loved, a man who didn't deserve what happened to him, but also proof that Ralph existed, thrived, was happy, at least until the end. I closed the album as darkness settled. 7 months ago, I sat in this same spot after Ralph's funeral, watching Leona whisper with Marcus at the gate. That was the beginning. Now it's the ending. Justice has been delivered through proper channels. Leona will spend the next quarter century in prison. Marcus as well. The conspiracy they built has been completely dismantled. Ralph's death has been avenged within the law, through evidence and testimony and jury verdict. I don't feel triumph. Revenge stories suggest satisfaction, catharsis, closure. I feel none of those things. I feel tired. I feel older. But I also feel that I kept my promise to find the truth and make sure justice was served. Ralph's life mattered. His death had consequences. That has to be enough. I sit as the stars emerge over Phoenix. My phone shows a message from Sandra. Final paperwork for the civil judgment. Official closure of the case. I'll read it tomorrow. Tonight, I just sit with Ralph's photo album on my lap, looking at the house I protected, the home he grew up in. Life continues. The pain of loss doesn't vanish with justice. But knowing the truth, seeing accountability delivered, provides something. Not peace exactly, but the absence of war. The fight is over. Ralph's killers have been punished. Tomorrow, I'll wake up and continue living, carrying my son's memory, knowing I did everything a father could do. Justice, imperfect and painful, has been restored. And somehow, that will have to be enough. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.